Hello everyone, it's Takuya here, and yes, I know it has been a while, and for that I'm going to go ahead and preemptively apologize. So two things happened to me in my life. First, I got a promotion at work, which I had to dedicate a lot more time to my job actually here in the past couple weeks in order to make things happen, and hey, it did, so that's great. The second thing is that immediately after that, I actually had gone on vacation. And since I was gone for a week down in Florida, well, I didn't have anything to record there at the time, which has put a big gap in between videos, and I apologize. On that note, what I am doing here in the future in order to make this happen is I'm going to make every Thursday a filming day, and that's something that I'm going to do automatically, regardless of whatever it is that I do during the week. Normally in the mornings I wake up and I go and I work out and I do something like that, but I've been burning myself out doing this in an effort to lose weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Thursday my break day. I'm going to do my filming and anything that I need to do on that day, and that means that the video is either going to go up Thursday evening or Friday morning, and that is how I'm going to structure that. It depends on how much editing I have to actually do for each video. So anyway, on that note, let's get into today's topic. What I am going to talk about is a continuation from my last video, in which it was the concept of Zulus versus Vikings, and exactly what would happen. Now, I've made a previous video that was discussing the Vikings, and how Viking was actually a verb, or not exactly a noun, and what this means for the Vikings as warriors, and how much we romanticize them and what they were actually like. So, oftentimes, when one is thinking of a battle and they're comparing the warriors, they like to take idealized versions of them. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're looking at realistically how these societies functioned, how these warriors fought, and what would end up happening with it. So let's take, for example, that you have a Zulu force versus a Viking force. For the sake of argument, we're going to say that each has around 1,000 strong, that they are equal in forces. Now, one is initially going to think that the Vikings are going to have an overwhelming advantage technologically. After all, even though the Zulus are in the 1800s in Africa, they don't have heavy armor, they don't have large steel weapons, etc. But this is not accurate for the Vikings. See, there's a problem. When one typically thinks of Vikings, they're thinking of these heavily armored, bulky warriors, bedecked in heavy armor, chainmail, brigandine, anything along these lines, armed with swords and axes and heavy weaponry designed to crush and destroy a person. No, that's not accurate. The overwhelming majority of Vikings were actually peasants. They were farmers, traders, fishermen, etc. Men who had been basically called up by their lord to go a Viking, to go on a raid, to bring wealth back to their home. And what this means is that the overwhelming majority of these warriors were at best armed with a shield and a spear, maybe the lightest of leather or cloth armor, but that is it. Perhaps even a helmet. But they were not heavily armored. And, on that note, they were not heavily trained warriors. Now, you could have a Huskarl, or something along that line, that is going to be what we think of, the idealized version. Now, when I say idealized, once again, I'm going to state this, Vikings did not have horned helmets, but for those of you watching, you probably already know this by now. So, let's get into the battle and how this is going to array. The Zulus are going to be on one side, the Vikings on the other, both about 1,000 men strong. The initial thing that is going to happen that the Vikings are going to try to do is that they're going to form into a shield wall, and the youngest, poorest men are going to be on the flanks and the front, armed with javelins, slings, bows, etc., anything along those lines. Again, for the sake of argument, we're going to say that they have 800 men in the shield wall, and there's going to be another 200 men that are skirmishing. These would be the light infantry. On the other hand, the Zulus are going to be 1,000 spearmen. The Zulus did not utilize skirmishing forces as we think of it. Instead, every single soldier was armed with a very large shield that was made of cowhide and a spear called the assegai. Now, the assegai was something that was a short stabbing spear, though it was also the term used for their throwing spear. So what we're going to call it then is the ikloa. The ikloa was actually the term for what it sounded like when the spear was stabbed into a person and then was taken out. Yes, they used a sound effect, like boom, but for the name of the spear, like ikloa. And that is actually what it meant. So, every Zulu warrior was armed with a cowhide shield that was provided by the state, as well as their spear. In addition to the spear, they were armed with anywhere between 1 to 3 or 4 throwing spears. So when they would go into battle, they would throw their spears as they were charging before they hit the line. So what this is going to do, right from the get-go when they meet, is that as the Zulus are coming in from one side and are throwing their spear, they're going to take some initial damage from the skirmishers, from slingers and bowmen that are obviously going to have longer range, but the overlarge cowhide shields are going to largely protect them, and it's not going to bring many of them down. The Vikings are going to fairly quickly realize that, hey, they don't have skirmishers. They're not coming in at us, they're charging. This is going to cause the skirmishers to quickly try and withdraw back across the line, and the shield wall is going to form up. Now we need to talk about the shield wall and exactly what this means. If you compare the shield wall to other types of formations, you can say that it's like a phalanx, except perhaps even more densely packed. And there's a reason for this. Shield walls were designed in such a way that the elites were on the flank and the weakest men were in the center. Now, why would you do that? Why would you want your center to be the weakest part of your formation? Because of how tightly packed it was, men couldn't move. Morale is a huge thing in battle. And if you throw peasants into a war with no training, or very limited training, they're more than likely going to run away the moment that their nerve breaks. The problem is, at least for the peasant, they can't run away if they're being locked in place in a formation like a shield wall. So the reason why the center was arguably the weakest of any shield wall was because of the men that it composed. But they were put there because the strongest, most elite men were on the flanks, and they actually held the line together. If a flank breaks, it's over. The whole thing is going to crumble. But in the case of the center, by keeping the flanks together and of the strongest elite men, it meant that the center had no way to actually get out, and they were stuck. So what is going to happen is that the Zulus are going to move forward in their classic bullhorn formation. The center, the body, is going to hit. When this hits, the shield wall is going to lock up, and the Zulus are going to start using a tactic that they were famous for, in which they would actually work to hook the shields and pull them away. That was actually something that they were trained specifically to do. This is going to create havoc amongst the center, because men who are locked in their shield are going to have their shield literally ripped away from them. And that is the moment that the Zulus are going to come in, stabbing. This is going to cause chaos in the ranks, but this is very quickly going to be followed by chaos. Or this is going to cause chaos in the center, but it's going to very quickly be followed by chaos on the flanks. The reason for this is that the horn formation of the Zulus was famous for the horns, the flanking maneuvers. The younger, faster, quicker men of the Zulus are going to move around the flanks while the center is distracted all along the line, and they are going to pincer the Vikings from the rear and sides. And this is going to distract the heavily armed forces on the flanks. Now, when I say this, it does not mean that the flanks are going to break, but they're going to be distracted and they're not going to be able to support the center. What this means is that all those forces that are holding the center together are going to lose their pressure. And this means that the center is far more likely to end up breaking and running away. Morale is a huge factor for battle. And when one compares the Zulus and the Vikings, there is one very distinct advantage that the Zulus have. The Zulus were trained to fight without retreating. The reason for this, as said in a previous video, is because if a Zulu war party came back after being defeated and they ran away, then what would happen is that their wives and children that were being held hostage by the king would have them killed in front of them and then would kill those warriors. The Vikings, on the other hand, don't have that. They have families that they want to return to and they're not going to be punished for. So what would happen with these Zulus is that they would effectively fight to the death. Because if they died to the last man, their families were still okay. If they retreated, they would be killed. It did not matter. This meant that you would see stories of Zulu war parties that even down to one man were still fighting without running away. And for the sake of morale, that is huge. See, in ancient warfare, there's a very distinct difference between modern warfare, and that is the amount of casualties that one sustains before retreating. In ancient warfare, you might take in a day somewhere around 5% casualties, 10% casualties on a bad day. And that would be something that would be very deadly. It would be awful. And having 5 to 10% of your force depleted would typically mean a retreat. This would change in modern warfare where those numbers would jump drastically. And so the moment that the line begins to kind of crumble on the Viking end, that is the moment that the Zulus are going to rip them apart and drive on through their lines. I can go into this a little bit more in depth. I'm not sure if anyone would want to see this. This is just something for how I would see the situation, and I hope to explain. I know that I had this video before here up on my wife's channel, in which we explained why the Zulus would actually win in a fight versus Vikings, and I hope that that clarifies some of the questions. Perhaps I'm going to need to go more in depth on this and do a whole little analysis. This is just something freeform that I thought that I would discuss. On that note, again, for future videos, I'm going to be filming every Thursday and posting it up either on Thursday or Friday. And then the second thing is that I do have a Patreon now. I'm going to put a link in the description below. I know that I'm not making a lot of content right now, but that's something that I am working on doing, and I hope to make it regular. One of the big things, and the reason why I am limited on content, is because I have so much other work that I have to do in my normal life. Depending on what it is that I'm able to do here in the future, then that just means that I can dedicate more time, energy, and resources to creating bigger and better and more frequent videos. So if you'd like to support me, please do give a like, a comment, see the links below. Until then, I will see you all next time. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.